Welcome back. It is your feel-good breakfast, and I can already tell you some hot music coming your way. But right now, let's focus in on world news. Indeed, the world is holding its breath, as later on today, the British public will vote whether or not Britain will leave the European Union. Now, it's been dubbed the Brexit referendum, and while it has obvious consequences in the UK and in Europe, what impact will it have in South Africa if they vote to go ahead with it? We're joined this morning by Mike Cohen, journalist from Bloomberg. And Mike, of course, I think one of the hottest topics right now in world news. So what will it exactly mean for the UK if the public does choose to vote to exit the European Union?
Morning. Well, it depends on who you speak to. For those who are proponents of the stay campaign, if they do leave, it means a decade of uncertainty for the UK, hundreds of thousands of job losses, the exit of a number of multinational companies who are based in the UK and will then leave because they will no longer have access to the European markets. Economist Paul Krugman estimates that it could take 2% of Britain's GDP, and billionaire George Soros says the pound could lose as much as 20% of its value. Wow. But that's one side of the debate. Those who favour leaving say it gives the UK greater say over its policy, over issues, and the big one in this regard is over immigration, and that they will also have greater control of their finances. They won't see such a flow of funds into the EU, and less say of the administrators or the bureaucrats in Brussels over Britain's policy.
What about those who hold South African passports, but also British passports that usually would allow them to travel throughout Europe? Does this mean that their travelling will be restricted to only the UK?
The short answer is we don't know. Should the vote go ahead for Britain to leave the EU, they then have 2 years to negotiate the terms of that exit, and there will be a lot of horse trading going on, depending on what they'll have to make a decision on, what kind of visas they'll need, and so on. I don't think that's the major issue. I think they'll still be able to travel there. The big issue is where people can live and work, and it's been a major one of the Leave campaign. Saying, there are just too many people going into Britain. The British economy is growing roughly twice the rate of the EU economy, which makes it much more attractive for people to go and live and work there. Yeah. The number of people living in Wales and England in 2011, which is the most recent data we have, there are about 13.4% of people living in those countries that are not British born, and that's double what the rate was 20 years ago. So that's been a major impact on the campaign.
But of course, we are all interlinked as a global village to some extent. So would this have a certain effect on South Africa and its economy?
I think there would definitely be an effect, but what that effect is kind of quite hard to tell, and it would depend on the terms of the 2-year negotiations. The only numbers I've seen is that South Africa's GDP could shrink 0.1%, and that was a study done by Professors Raymond Parson and Wilma Viers at the University of the Northwest, with our agriculture and transport and manufacturing goods industries worst affected. We've had Ministers Rob Davies and Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan saying there'd be no immediate effect on trade. Now, Britain's South Africa's 5th largest trading partner, two-way flows of about 130 billion rand last year. So, I mean, if you've got the British economy shrinking and the pound getting weaker, there's definitely going to be less demand for South African goods. And I think if the no vote actually came in, you'd see an immediate weakening of South Africa's rand and probably bonds. Wow. I guess the good thing is that the chances of this vote going ahead seem to be reasonably slim. You've got the polls pointing to a 50-50 chance of it going either way. The bookies are saying 3-1 that they'll stay, and you can only get 1 to 4 odds that they'll leave. And we saw the pound hitting its strongest level this year, indicating that the markets are really reading that Britain stays in.
Well, all we can do right now is wait and see what happens with the Brexit referendum, but surely a top world news story that a lot of people will be focusing on throughout today. Graham, I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because you've got a bit of a connection.